In this video, we will be discussing the Design Policy Responses page. The objective of policy responses in SQM is to record the firm's policy responses. Policy responses are the firm's statements of how the firm responds to assessed quality risks. Policy responses can be found in the Design module. This page includes a table that contains mandatory policy responses, network policy responses, and firm policy responses. Mandatory policy responses are those policy responses that are prescribed by the firm's applicable quality management standard. The firm must consider if they are relevant to the firm. Network policy responses are those policy responses that are prescribed by the firm's network firm, where the firm belongs to a network. The network firm will distribute the prescribed policy responses, which are then imported in settings. The firm must then consider if the network policy responses are relevant to them. Firm policy responses are those policy responses that are recorded by the firm and are in addition to the mandatory and network policy responses. Policy responses included in the table can only be edited in draft status. If a policy response has already been signed off as prepared, the sign-off must be removed before the policy response can be edited. To edit a policy response already in the table, click on the Expand button to show the record of the policy response. Select the Edit button to open the policy response dialog. The content of the policy response is then edited as needed, and the changes saved by clicking on the Save button. Policy responses can be deleted by expanding the policy response and selecting the Delete button. If a policy response has been signed off as prepared, the sign-off must be removed before the policy response can be deleted. Note that mandatory and network policy responses cannot be deleted. If the policy response does not apply to a firm, it will be marked as Not Relevant only. These policy responses are therefore not carried forward in the firm's design of the system of quality management. Only policy responses selected as relevant and signed off as prepared will be considered finalized and therefore included in the draft system of quality management and published where the firm approves and publishes the draft system of quality management. Every relevant policy response must therefore be signed off as prepared once finalized. The policy response dialog can be completed by either adding a new policy response or by editing a policy response from the list of policy responses already included in the table. When completing a mandatory or network policy response, some of the fields will be pre-populated and cannot be edited. The policy response dialog contains the following fields: Linked risks, where the quality risks that are addressed by the policy response are listed in this field. Title, which is the short title for this policy response. The title is visible in tables and when selecting items from libraries. It should therefore be concise but clearly indicate what the policy response is. ID, which is the unique identification number for this policy response. Type. No input is required in this field. The field is automatically completed based on the process that was followed to include the policy response. Relevant, where the user selects either yes or no. The default is yes to indicate that the policy response is relevant to the firm. Reason for not relevant. This field appears when the firm has indicated that the policy response is not relevant to the firm. It is a compulsory field. Policy response. This is the field where the wording of the firm policy response is recorded. When a policy response is selected from the library, the firm will edit the policy response to align with the firm's unique characteristics. Mandatory and network policy responses cannot be edited, and the additional description field can be used to provide more context to a prescribed policy response. Additional description. In this field, the firm can include an additional description of the policy response if it is considered necessary. Where mandatory and network policy responses are selected as relevant, a firm may choose to provide more context to the policy response in this field. Applicable standards. Select the standard or standards that the policy response relates to. Where the firm has only selected one applicable standard, then no selection is required. Authoritative references can be included where relevant. Links, where documentation saved elsewhere can be linked to this policy response. Include any additional notes or comments in the Note field. Previously recorded procedure responses can be linked to this policy response using the drop-down menu in the Linked Procedure Responses field. When a procedure response is recorded later, the link to this policy response will be recorded when completing the procedure response dialog. The Effective From field is an optional field and can be left blank if the policy response will become effective immediately on publishing it to the firm's system of quality management. When a policy response is only effective from a specific date in the future, that effective date is recorded in this field. The policy response can then be recorded and published before the effective date. The Effective To field is an optional field and should be left blank if the policy response will remain in effect for the foreseeable future. When it is decided that a policy response will no longer be applicable from a specific date, the date on which the policy response will no longer apply to the firm's system of quality management is recorded in this field. The change can then be published to the firm's system of quality management in advance, and the policy response itself will be in operation until the sunset date is reached. Fields indicated with a red asterisk indicate fields that must be completed before the policy response can be saved. Fields indicated with a blue asterisk are not required to be completed before the policy response can be saved, but must be completed before the policy response can be signed off as prepared. When the relevant information has been recorded in the policy response, save the information in the dialog. Before continuing with the rest of the design of the firm's system of quality management, the firm should have considered each mandatory and network policy response and indicated whether they are relevant or not, and recorded any additional policy responses that are required to address the assessed quality risks. Finally, all relevant policy responses should have been signed off as prepared. You now know how to complete the Design Policy Response page. This page also contains the following features. Please continue watching for more on the features available on this page. SQM provides the user with various features when working with content in tables. These include group the content by columns, choose which columns to show, filter columns, search for values in columns, expand rows, sort content by columns, and resize columns. Note that customizations made on the view are not persistent, and the table returns to the default view when the page is refreshed. To export data in a dialog or on a page, select the Export All Data icon. A new Excel file will be downloaded to the Downloads folder, from where the user can use the file. Note that this exported file is not in a format that can be re-imported into SQM. To work on an Excel template where content can be imported into SQM, go to Settings, Import. To sign off an item indicating that it is prepared, reviewed, or that the responsibility is accepted, the user selects the Sign Off icon. The Sign Off icon will be replaced by the avatar of the user that signed off. A toast is also reflected at the bottom right corner. To remove the sign-off, select the avatar and click on Remove Sign-Off. The sign-off icon will reappear, and a toast at the bottom right corner will confirm that the sign-off has been removed. Links or URLs can be added to documentation saved elsewhere. URLs can either be to a document in the Caseware Cloud instance or to another location, such as the firm's SharePoint library. To add a link or URL to another document, select the option to add a new annotation. In the dialog, add the link to the field and a note for other users to understand what the document is. Click Save. The newly added link will be indicated by a link icon. Hover over the icon to see the URL and the note for that link. In predefined instances, more than one link can be added. This will be indicated by the Add a New Annotation icon located below the link icon. To add a new item, select the Quick Create icon. Select the item to be added from the drop-down menu. Only items relevant to your role and the module you are in will be displayed. A dialog will open for the newly created item. Complete the dialog and click on Save to save the item, or click on Close to discard and exit. Thank you for watching.